and let us all do we can to build a better future.
So there's some drama at TYT. Now, this has been developing over the week, right? And it's been interesting to see the overall fallout that the hosts of TYT are having with their audience. And it has to deal with conflicting opinions, as well as the transgender movement in this country. And look, I have a lot of disagreements and anger towards TYT. I never liked how they smeared Jimmy Dore or Aaron Mate or Max Blumenthal. Still sore about that. Furious about that. But I've seen some of Anna Kasparian's recent takes, some of her opinions. And I understand where she's coming from. However, it's okay for us also to sit back, kind of smile and say, wow, everyone who, all the TYT stands who used to call Jimmy Dore and everyone else right-wingers look pretty foolish right now. Case in point, I want to bring this up here. Shout out to Nick from RBN. All the TYT stands who used to call Jimmy Dore and everyone else right-wingers are looking dumb as F right now. Anna Kasparian tweets this out. The civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement. They didn't barricade speakers they disagreed with in a classroom for 3 hours. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity. I don't know. Anna, you need to open up a book a little bit here and there, but it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. But there's been this huge fallout that's been going on. And I want to give a huge shout out to Turncoat Don, who's been able to more or less really bring up a clipped video segment of Anna Kasparian, sharing her perspectives and points of view. Now, again, this video is timestamped, and this link is in the show notes, in the description box below for the live stream show. I will post a link when this video is clipped. But I want to talk about really how she's talking about, more or less, how she's been changing her opinion and understanding the other side in good faith, which says a lot. It truly does. So let's play that.
All of these issues are way more complicated than the way they're being portrayed in partisan media. And so what I want to do is actually understand those complexities. But here's the other thing. Understand the other side in good faith, okay? Because I think that there are some stereotypes that the left has kind of bought into about what the arguments are on the other side. And, it doesn't make us sharper to misrepresent what the other side is actually saying. It actually makes us weaker. If you understand what their arguments are, it'll then allow you to reflect on what your own weaknesses might be in regard to the arguments that you're making. And so, right. And then one other thing, and this was an unexpected outcome that I was talking to my husband about just last night. I've been a lot happier lately, like a lot happier.
And I understand why she's becoming a little bit more happier. Look, let's be very clear here. Especially after 2020, TYT kind of attached itself to the social justice warrior industrial complex, being triggered by anything or anyone that was critical of the squad, the movement, or how they were running their policies, or how they were taking care of political issues in Washington, D.C., and again, channels like Jimmy Dore, Hard Lens, RBN, Nico House, Convo Couch, Russell Brand, Joe Rogan, all of us were caught in the crosshairs and sights of TYT as they deemed us as right-wingers or bad people for even talking to conservatives or libertarians or even progressives who were walking away from the Democratic Party. You see, when you attach yourself to the social justice warrior industrial complex, and I've seen this before, they're very puritanical. You have to agree with what the overall message is and not ever once ask any questions. And I want to bring up Hard Lens Media's example because we dealt with it in the streets. Okay? back in the day when we had a Galaxy S7 cell phone covering protests and movements. And again, this is why I've said on the show, I really don't respect the majority of activists who are out there protesting. There's only very few people who I call the dauntless few. You got Rome from RBN being consistent. You got Misty Winston, extremely consistent, especially for advocating for Julian Assange. You got Jose Vega and his team calling out these politicians. See, they are the exception. They have followed through, and most importantly, the key word is being consistent. When Daniel and I covered those Trump protests, they'd always start somewhere in downtown Chicago. Rally there, all the people there smiling with their signs, and then they go ahead and protest right in front of Trump Tower, but not in front of the building. See, there's a river separating Trump Tower and where the protesters would meet up, and they'd be herded into a little cage. And after a while, Daniel and I really started asking questions. Is this all what they're going to do? All these activists and social justice groups start somewhere in downtown Chicago and then march to Trump Tower? Eventually, we did ask some of the leaders, like, hey, are you going to protest in front of some of the senator office buildings in downtown Chicago or any of the Democratic Party offices downtown here in Chicago? Because they're not really following through on their end. They're cheering for all of you, but dismissing any of your concerns. To which a lot of the movement leaders would be dismissive or say, no, we have to do this because Trump's the problem. But eventually, Daniel and I were dismissed, ignored, called sexist, misogynist, racist. It's true. Whenever we covered a lot of those socialist groups, and I mean no disrespect to socialists, boy, oh boy, just even trying to just do a coverage of an event or a town hall, it's like pulling teeth, like so paranoid and scared. Are you with a conservative media outlet? That's what we would get a lot. I remember one person said, oh, you guys are covering this just to make yourselves look good or profit off of our name. And it's like, no. Because one of our main goals back in the day before we even got on radio was, hey, shining a light on people who are trying to do good. All those activist groups and organizers silent after 2020. Nothing but frauds. Continuing on, though.
And I think it's because once you actually, and look, I want to make the distinction and like draw out a caveat. I'm not talking about like far right, like militia members. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about just mainstream conservatives, Republicans, whatever. Once you actually understand what their arguments are or where they're coming from, it's a lot more difficult to be hyperbolic about things, right? Yeah. And so you kind of start seeing.
And also to Carl's point on Rockfin Kit, they are losing their audience. Yeah, because Anna, it's going to be brought up here. And again, shout out to Turncoat Don, who was able to clip this video up. I will post this link not only in the live stream chat, but I will post it when this video is clipped as well.
The world around you for what it really is. And there's a certain amount of fear that kind of starts to dissipate, a certain amount of like hyperbolic thinking that starts to go away, and you start to see things a lot more clearly. And the world isn't as messed up as people would have you believe. And that's a good thing. Now, some people might get super offended at me saying that because they've completely bought into the hyperbolic thinking and they think the world's coming to an end. And there are terrible things happening. I don't want to minimize that, but we need to be realistic about what's actually transpiring in the country.
And also shout out to George Johnson in the live stream chat. Now she sees the subtle differences in people on the right. Now, look, I've spoken to Republicans and libertarians, and no, there's a lot of things I don't agree with, especially on some economic policy issues. But there's a lot of things that we have common ground on. And I'd rather speak to people with different perspectives and points of view because maybe they might have a perspective that I never considered before. Because I don't want to live in a world where everyone's agreeing. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Everything's great. Everything's hunky-dory. And that's the problem that TYT puts itself into, is that they put themselves with a group that's extremely puritanical in how they run their operations.
And for areas where we need improvement or different policy solutions, we should actually have good faith debates about it and come up with those solutions. And I think that the current discourse is standing in the way of that. And that's the other thing. I mean, I think that the left has completely, and they'll deny this, but I mean, just go to Twitter right now. They've like abandoned economic policies and instead hyper focused on incredibly divisive, like identity related issues.
And that's something that TYT helped foster. But again, let's have democracy in the chat. I wonder how you, the audience, are going to vote. What is more important, identity politics and pronouns, or, God damn it, the economy? Type 1 of, Kit, my pronouns are important. Identity politics are important. Gosh darn it. Or I'll do a protest ho fest. A type 2 like, no, man, the economy's important, man. I'm broke. It costs $300 just to go outside. I wonder how you're going to vote, my lovelies.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
yeah. And like their take is always, oh, well, the other side wants us they're racist. That's why. They're transphobic. That's why. And it's like, no, you got to do.
But TYT, you did the same thing too, especially to Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mate, Max Blumenthal, everybody. Now, I'd be more than happy. Here's the thing, just out of good faith, I would like to actually have a conversation with Anna and have her on the show and share her perspectives with us. Just to talk it out. I don't think it'll happen, but we could always try.
Do more than that. So if you're going to, if you're going to refute what they're saying, then actually address the points they're making. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to come out looking incredibly weak and childish. Look, I don't want to be part of the problem. I don't want to.
Only now she doesn't want to be part of the problem. Okay, that's fine. Whatever.
Add to this toxic discourse that does nothing to improve anyone's life. And I feel like I've been engaging in that, and I feel embarrassed about it. And that's really.
And that's beautiful. She's acknowledging it. That's great. Personal development and growth, 100%. I approve of that. Now, I apologize to Jimmy and Aaron.
Where I'm coming from. I want to get people healthcare. I want to get people housing. Those are the issues that matter. Let's put healthcare aside for a second, because here's the other thing. The far left will push ideas that are not popular with the general public, right?
Yes.
So I think that protecting, marginalized communities, protecting the transgender community is important. However, when you move out of or move far away from making sure that they are not denied housing, making sure that they're not denied healthcare, when you move into like these more fringe areas of like, I mean, there was a story out of the UK this week, blows my mind. There was an LGBTQ group in the UK who suggested that instead of referring to vaginas as vaginas because it might be offensive to transgender men, one of the potential replacements or substitutes could be.
Brace yourself for this. Brace yourself for this word in the UK.
Bonus hole.
I mean, I can understand where Anna's coming from, okay? Now, that's going to tick off the extremist social justice warriors in the social justice warrior industrial complex, because be like, that's a perfect term. No, it's not a perfect term. I do not accept that. Bonus? Oh, what? What? No wonder no one takes the left serious. Good God Almighty. But hold on. There's a little more. There's a little more. Because I want to fast forward it to this part here to where Anna feels like she has awakened out of a cult-like mindset. Again, very important here. Let's pull up this video.
This is hyperbolic talk, so I want to make sure I mention that before I say it. But I keep telling, I've told Jane.
And by the way, folks, yes, I don't like that idea. Okay. No, hashtag. No, I don't want to get banned off of YouTube. Oh my goodness. I mean, seriously, bonus hole? What? That was a line that even Anna was like, okay, all right, I'm done with this. We're backing this thing up. No.
On multiple occasions, I'm like, I feel like I just woke up and got out of a cult, right? Because it's a little bit, it is a little bit cultish, and I don't think it's literally a cult, but I think what happens is like the dynamics that you just described is exactly right. And people are scared. Like, we as humans, we thrive in our social groups, and we need to have that social group in order. Like, it's just how we evolve. And so I get it. I understand the mentality behind it. But there were certain things going on in my personal life that I'm very grateful for, because it didn't keep me grounded enough, but at least kept me grounded to the
Mastermind Hour, I see you trying to rhyme. Don't be a quitter. Yeah, I'm not saying the rest. You know what? You're given immunity. You don't have to see the White House counselor.
point where I had a way of seeing the other side to some extent. So I'll tell you a few examples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my husband's Cuban. He is not like a conservative Cuban guy. In fact, he was pretty apolitical when we met. He's become more politicized as we've been together, but nonetheless, his family, hardcore Republicans. Like, they just are, And at first, like in 2016, when we got married, I remember I would get into like these super uncomfortable fights and debates with them. And I was just like, I had in my mind, like, all of these made up ideas of what they believed. And finally, I just decided, look, I love my husband. I don't want to like put him in an awkward position of like having his wife constantly in conflicts with his family. So let me just calm down and just try to understand where they're coming from. And then what I started to do was, instead of like challenging them, whenever they would talk about something like healthcare, for instance.
So sort of like what Jimmy Dore would do, or RBN, or Hard Lens Media, or Convo Couch, like actually talking to people. Like, look, hey, I'm reaching out to people in the Libertarian Party to see if I can have Libertarian candidates on the show here too. I'm not going to agree with everything, but they are running for office. And I'm friends with a few Libertarians. I'm friends with a lot of people. And I have to say, you got to see how everyone's coming at in the world. And the older I've gotten, I have to say, okay, instead of fighting, all right, tell me why you think X, Y, and Z are correct over A, B, C, or what are your criticisms of this thing, or your perspective on this issue? It's important to see the world through a wide perspective. It's important not to be closed-minded. I wish TYT learned this earlier on before they helped contribute to the growing cannibalism within the leftist movement.
Well, they think everything Democrats do is like
socialism.
By definition, like they're all socialists, they're all communists.
Right.
They're all,
and by the way, yes, again, hey, conservatives or Republicans, really, come up with some new words out of the source, okay? I still can't get this out of my head. In 2022, when Illinois was having its elections, the Republican challenger was calling J.B. Pritzker a communist and a socialist and a Marxist. Now, for those of you who don't know, J.B. Pritzker is from the Pritzker family. They are a very extremely wealthy family. The last thing those people are freaking communists. Is that all you have, Republican politicians? Republican voters, listen. You don't have to like Democratic politicians, but you know what? Just maybe pull your politicians or your leaders aside and be, hey, look, he doesn't really fit the profile of a communist, so let's try out some new words. Just maybe call it corporatist, or he's part of an establishment, because communism is one thing, right? We all know the theories and the economic issues and policy issues around communism. J.B. Pritzker does not fit that profile. I'm just throwing it out there. This isn't open for a debate or a conversation. It's just lazy, okay? So come over with some new words. There's a book called The Source. I'm using it too. It'll help you out.
and look, considering the trauma they experienced, I get where they're coming from in that regard. But, I wanted to kind of like convince them that's not the case. So instead of being combative, when we were talking about healthcare, for instance, it was hilarious because one of his family members accidentally admitted that when she was pregnant and she had to go on Medicaid, that it was the best healthcare she's ever had, right?
Oh no.
And like, look, instead of going like, aha, I gotcha, right? Like, you know, antagonizing her for it,
Right.
I was like, you know what, you make a really good point. Like, you know, free at the point of service, you know, and I'm just trying to get her to absorb and really fully understand what she's.
Now, hold on. Call in Rockfin says, I don't trust her. This seems like a ploy for money and a need for a new audience. Let's have democracy in the chat. Type 3 if you think that this is a ploy. Type 4 if she's really being sincere here. And I'm going to say from my perspective here, I think the way she's been attacked by former colleagues of TYT and others, I think she is being sincere here. I have to agree that, you know, maybe she is feeling politically homeless. Maybe she is tired of the rhetoric and the puritanical points of view. And let's face it, there are Puritans on the left. And there's this whole narrative, especially from our also fantastic members in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, that they only focus on identity politics, not on the economy, on statements and feel-good words. And that's it. And maybe, and look, maybe I'm wrong on this, but maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting. It would be, I would be firm in my belief if Anna were to apologize to Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. Okay, so I understand where people are coming from. Kyle, I see you voted 3. Let's see how the rest of the viewing audience YouTube has. Well, we got a couple of 3s here. Well, okay. Well, hey, who knows? It could be a ploy. I want to hold out for the audacity of hope that maybe it's something else. And I'm willing to admit, hey, I was wrong. I could be wrong. But I like to think that maybe there's some growth and development happening here. I still want to look at the good in people before I see the evil.
Just said, right? And so I think there's a way to talk to people. I think there's a way to find common ground. There was this actress, I always forget her name, but she's beautiful. She's in that show, that HBO show about rich people vacationing. White Lotus, the first season of White Lotus. There's this one actress who had posted photos of her mother's birthday on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And in that photo, or in the series of photos she posted, you could see family members in the back wearing like MAGA hats. And the amount of backlash this actress received was intense.
Wow.
And they were mad at her for refusing to condemn and cut off her family members.
Ridiculous.
And I was like, no, you don't do that. Like, how do you think you're gonna win politically by doing that?
And again, that's an issue that we see a lot of Puritans in the progressive movement, the social justice warrior complex. I have seen it firsthand. All these people who say, oh, you must be canceled. I've had activists come up to me and tell me, this was early on back in the day, and Daniel's the only witness who can attest to this, who told me, you need to interview more outsider groups. And also one person in particular said, you need to interview much more women. You need to interview a lot of women, more women, right? And I mentioned to this person, well, I actually interviewed some libertarian candidates, and the libertarian candidates at the time, I think 3-4 of them were women, and just their face from smirk smugness, like, you need to do this, to where like it just looked like a melting candle. It's like, oh, well, not interview those people. And I remember, especially when we got into radio, activists and other community people were telling me, oh, don't interview libertarians, don't interview this group, don't interview that group, telling me what to do and how to think, dismissing the work we were doing. But when I had those individuals who were telling me who to interview, who not to interview, right? When I had them on my show, you want to know what's funny? Sometimes I get messages from other groups saying, oh, you shouldn't have interviewed that person. They're considered an outsider, or they're not pragmatic. That's the whole thing about cancel culture. Anyone in that mindset is, they think that they are holier than thou. And it's a real serious problem, especially something that the left has to take into account for. So recently then, there was a former member of TYT who left, who was, I believe, interviewed on the Vanguard. They went by the name of Benjamin Carlo. So that was a thing. So let me go ahead and pull this up here because, again, it turns out all the identity politics people are now canceling TYT. And this person who left, why aren't you willing to have Benjamin Carlo on the main show to discuss the clear issue with TYT? Real progressives are willing to hear differences, grow, and learn. There's an opportunity for you to do that too. And Jank responds, she quit, number one, so she's too pure for us. Two, she is an unhinged person who called me evil, racist, transphobe, and other endless insults, and lied about our private conversation. Wow, what a level-headed person that I could learn from and grow by talking to. Great idea. To which, again, Anna does make a statement about this, too. Let's go ahead and share that up here. Let me make sure I remove this and get ready to pull up this video here for all of you to enjoy.
Welcome to our last social break of the show. And in our Twitch subs, we have Vitengale, who is commenting about Benny leaving TYT and says that silence is violence. So since you want me to address it, I will address it. So unfortunately, Benny has decided to leave TYT. I am definitely heartbroken over her decision to do that. I wish that Benny decided to stay here despite our, in my opinion, incredibly minor differences of opinion that have been blown out of proportion on Twitter with people encouraging Benny to leave TYT. Benny is now doing her own thing, has her own YouTube channel, had already had her own Twitch channel and all of that. I really, really encourage you guys to go out there and support Benny and the work that she's doing. I think the perspectives that she is sharing with you all is an important perspective. I think that perspective was also incredibly important to have here at TYT. And I'm very sad that she's no longer sharing that perspective here with us. But I have no ill will, no hate, no bad feelings toward Benny whatsoever. I know that she's upset with me. I want to be clear in saying that I've never, ever supported.
Now, I just want to point this out here. Again, this took place the day after Anna was on Stitching at him. So again, that's what happened. Because apparently Benjamin got upset that Anna didn't really like the idea of bonus hole or other identity politics issues taking the front and center stage in regards towards what Americans really want.
Bans on gender affirming care. I am still very much supportive of the transgender community. My opinions,
Again, just want to pull up this right here again, because I want to go back to the last previous video here. But let's hear the rest of Anna's statement. So that way all of you can get the full picture and understand what is going on.
No hate, no bad feelings toward Benny whatsoever. I know that she's upset with me. I want to be clear in saying that I've never, ever supported bans on gender affirming care. I am still very much supportive of the transgender community. My opinions mostly center on tactics in order to garner more support for the trans community. And my argument in regard to not front loading and pushing the more fringe elements would probably yield better results in securing healthcare, housing, and anti-discrimination laws for the trans community.
And the thing is, the problem is, in spite of everything you might have ever done, eventually the social justice warriors will hate you for it and deem you not pure enough to speak for them. Or perhaps they'll say to you, well, you don't fully understand the issues, so you shouldn't be talking about it. Again, you can't appease extremists or Puritans. They'll always come at you. And even when you offer advice, like sometimes Daniel and I would, when we talk to these activists and organizers, we were always dismissed.
I get that there's a difference of opinion. I think if you look at my history here at TYT, the countless segments I've done about the transgender community, you will be very well aware that I have absolutely no malice or hatred toward trans people. If anything, again, my opinions really center on tactics and what we should do or what could be done in order to garner the most support. But for anyone who's spreading lies about me, supposedly being a transphobe, anyone who thinks that me liking Jesse Singal and sticking up for him when he's been smeared and slandered, if you think that translates to me hating transgender people or being a transphobe, you would be mistaken.
And again, I just want to pull up this last part of the video segment here where Anna talks about counterproductive messaging. And it's important because we have to hear this, okay? Because messaging is important. And when you have Puritans dictating to you how to feel and how to act, you're going to want to say to them, no, hit the reset button because you're way off.
You can take some of the injustices in the world or in the country you live in and have that inform every decision you make and have that impact your mentality in regard to what you can and can't accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to some extent, and I haven't fully formed an opinion on this, right? It's just something that I'm leaning toward and I want to explore it more. I'm a little bit concerned that the left, and at this point I'm talking about the left broadly, I'm a little concerned that the messaging that they've engaged in for quite some time now toward the Black community is to some extent insulting toward them and infantilizing toward them and stereotypical. So like it was kind of jarring to me in the whole affirmative action debate. And there seems to be this like weird agreement that I don't agree to, that like, oh my God, if we don't have affirmative action, Black people could never get into colleges or universities.
Yeah, that's so bad.
And I just don't like, I don't know, that rubs me the wrong way. Sometimes I'm worried that the messaging, the hyperbolic messaging, because think about it, if you're told over and over again, this country is unfair, you're never gonna make it, you're never gonna make it, why even try? Why even try? Like, and I'm worried that disempowers people. So I don't know. It's something that I want to explore more. I want to understand more. Maybe there are some sociologists that have like studied this and researched this. And if you guys have any recommendations, I'd love to read it. I think.
So again, look, messaging is important. How to speak to people is important. And I want to say this. I think that there is some growth here with Anna. Okay. Maybe I'm being too idealistic. I've been told that, Kit, sometimes, man, your idealism gets the better of you. And it has. I'm trying to cut that out of me. But there does come a point to where when you hear a lot of these social justice people talk about the issues, and as soon as you do not fall in line with their perspective, you are named enemy number one, or you're worse than the guy who was running the Third Reich, first name Adolf, last name Hitler. Let's be clear here. It's important for us to look at things through a wide lens. And so now I'm seeing Anna getting smeared because she's been on other people's shows. She was speaking to Ben Shapiro, all that other stuff, even though it took place last year. But I, for one, welcome this. I'm glad that she's changing her perspective and point of view. I am glad that she's showing some maturity in regards to looking at things differently now and talking to people of different political points of view, to which I do hope that one day in the future, maybe not now, that there's an apology towards Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. Maybe. Right now, Anna's going to be in for it in some way because, again, there's a whole industry out there for the social justice warrior industrial complex to smear people who think differently. Case in point, this is something that Jimmy Dore knows all too well that he has had to deal with. Shout out to Glenn Greenwald for bringing this up. So I want to end this with a palate cleanser.
This obsession with you, I don't mean with your strategy, but with you personally. There's like an entire, I think they're going to create a Pulitzer Prize soon called Pulitzer Prize for Excellence in Commentary on James Dore. It's like an entire fucking industry. Like a third of the left media talks about you personally, constantly, all the time. It reminds me a lot, in 2010, 2011, 2012, when WikiLeaks pioneered this really groundbreaking model of how secrets of the most powerful entities on the planet can be leaked and published. It found a major vulnerability in actual power. It was incredibly innovating and inspiring and exciting and important. And within a short period of time, all anyone wanted to talk about was that Julian Assange was an asshole, that he had like an abrasive personality, that, you know, as though like the issue was, do you want to date him? And it just became like, no, that guy's a jerk. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, he is a jerk. Julian's a jerk in like a lot of ways, and like a lot of ways that I can be. You're definitely an asshole.
Hey, look, folks, I'm not perfect. Sometimes yours truly can be a real dick. Okay. I could be a real Dirk Pitt, for example. If anyone remembers that reference, that's from one of our movie nights. But look, no one's perfect. And this is something that TYT is going to have to deal with now, because as soon as you fall out of line with these social justice warriors, they start smearing you and smearing you and smearing you.
Like, these things are not in dispute, but they're also totally irrelevant. If you're on the left, you have two choices. One is to try and think about how to fuck with Wall Street like that Reddit group just did, or to blow holes open in the walls of the NSA or the CIA like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange did, or try and take down the monopoly power of Silicon Valley like a lot of hardworking people are doing who care about those issues, including your good friend Matt Stoller. Or you can just like devote yourself to like internet gossip and bullshit chatter and like trivial personality disputes. That is super easy. And it's also profitable. People love to like hate. You stimulate hatred. Fuck Jimmy Dore. Fuck Jimmy Dore. Look at what he said. He put this guy on his show. What does that have to do with politics? You claim that you're interested in the working class. You claim you're interested in people's lack of healthcare coverage, in people's inability to get jobs, to live. They have to live at home. Their communities are ravaged by joblessness and and you're talking about Jimmy fucking Dore and whether or not he's a good guy or whether or not you like him, instead of the strategy that he pioneered that caused a huge debate about how to bring. If you're doing that, you are an absolute and complete and total coward and a fraud.
True. Like a lot of these people who are social justice warriors smearing Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mate, and so much more. Look, folks, in order to fight for a better future, you have to see things through the other side's perspective and point of view. And I, for one, welcome the change. I, for one, welcome people thinking differently. I, for one, welcome the idea of all of us growing and seeing things through another perspective. Now more than ever, we have to fight for that better future. And I'm actually quite proud to see Anna make this change. Whether or not there's consistency behind it is yet to be seen, but I welcome it. But again, beware of the social justice warriors, because as soon as you try and cater to that audience, you're catering to a puritanical perspective, which is why I'm so proud of you, my viewing audience. Each of you come from different points of views and perspectives, and I welcome your points of views and perspectives, because that's how the real world works. You're going to run into people who have different points of view. There's nothing wrong with a simple conversation. That's what we believe here at Hard Lens Media.